Welcome to the Chicago Bar Association's You and the Law. I am Janine Cordero, a member of the association. The Trump presidential administration continues to make immigration a front and center issue. A wave of fear sweeps the country as citizens attempt to deal with a rise in hate crimes and speech, a confusing travel ban, a spotlight on immigrants, and a promise to empower law enforcement to remove illegal immigrants swiftly. Here to talk about these issues are Betsy Schuman Moore, Director of Fair Housing and Hate Crimes Projects at the Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, and Fred Tsao, Senior Policy Counsel at the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights. Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
So we have, before we get to breaking news, I'd like to ask you, Betsy, if you could just briefly describe your organization and your role within the organization.
Sure. The Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, it was founded in 1969, right in the heat of the civil rights movement, it's a partnership of law firms working together with us to fight for racial equity and equal opportunity for all in the Chicago area. And then we have the projects including fair housing and hate crime, also voting rights, educational equity, a community law project, and a settlement assistance project.
Great. And Fred, tell us about your organization.
Sure. We are the state's largest multi-ethnic, multinational immigrants' rights advocacy organization. We are an umbrella of more than 100 different organizations representing the diversity of our state's immigrant population.
Very good. And so we talked about the travel ban in my introduction, which is obviously a hot topic and even hotter today because a replacement order came out, right? Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, just this morning, the morning that we are taping, the Trump administration issued a revised travel ban that makes several significant changes. Iraq is no longer subject to the ban. Also, the ban removes language that appears to prefer religious minorities from these predominantly Muslim countries. And there are certain provisions that remove certain classes of individuals from the ban. Nevertheless, the key provisions of the ban are still in place. Refugee resettlement is shut down entirely for 120 days. Admissions from of individuals from 6 predominantly Muslim countries is also suspended for 90 days, that's
sort of the general feel of it.
Yeah.
Does it look like this ban will withstand a test by a court of law? Because the old ban obviously did not.
Well, that certainly seems to be the intent of the issuance of this revised ban. It's still, I think we still need to study what's actually in the document.
Right, because it's just fresh. People
Yeah.
need to read and understand what's going on.
Exactly.
So a president is within his or her right to issue an executive order about such a topic, correct?
It is within the executive's authority to exercise certain prerogatives. Having said that, though, the president is still subject to the law and specifically to the Constitution. And as you mentioned, the litigation that tied up the initial version of the ban, and there were observations and rulings that the initial ban violated certain provisions of the Constitution. So we'll see.
Are bans unusual, travel bans, or is this something that's been around for a while?
There have been some much more limited examples of bans, temporary bans applying to specific countries for specified specified periods of time, but nothing this sweeping.
And so, why would we want a travel ban? What's the philosophy behind it? Is it for our national security? Why are these particular countries targeted? Just briefly.
Yeah, far be it from me to try to repeat the rationales put forward by this administration. There seems to be this underlying premise that's people like me and many of our allies would question, regarding potential threats that are posed by individuals who are seeking admission under our refugee admission system or otherwise coming in on temporary visas.
Okay.
And again,
perhaps,
we reject that premise.
right, and because of conflicts, potentially political and military conflicts in these particular countries, there's a view perhaps that people coming in from those countries could be potentially dangerous.
Right,
Is that it?
right. And
Okay.
I should add just really quickly that a couple of documents from the Department of Homeland Security itself have leaked out over the past several weeks, undercutting significantly the rationale for this ban.
Okay. Betsy, let's talk about hate crimes because it seems to me that there's been a surge, not only in just hate speech, but also in things such as Jewish cemeteries being vandalized, synagogues, and then many other instances, not just in the Jewish community, and we'll get to talk about things that we're seeing in other communities here in Chicago. But what constitutes a hate crime?
Well, there's been a judgment by our legislature that hate crimes, which is bias plus a crime or discrimination, cause greater harm to the community, so that there needs to be a strong rejection to them, a higher penalty that's paid, as well as just special resources that are given. So an oversimplification of the law is that it's crime plus discrimination. So that means the discrimination as defined in the law are a basis of race, religion, ethnic origin, sexual orientation, disability, and gender. And gender identity is included now under sexual orientation. So when you have one of those bases plus a crime, that equals and meets the strict definition of hate crime under our law.
Okay. And what are you seeing in the community here in Chicago in terms of hate crimes, or you also mentioned a hate incidents, which doesn't rise to the level of a crime, but is also threatening or debasing, that sort of thing?
Exactly. So hate incidents, even if they don't meet that strict definition, are also of concern to us.
Sure.
And there has been, sadly, a rise in hate crimes and hate incidents coinciding with the election. And nationally, it's been documented, and just recently it was also documented by the Chicago Police Department that there's been a big increase in the last 3 months. And
is this across all communities, African American, Hispanic, Muslim, or is it centered more towards one group?
What I read in about the report is that it is certain groups, which might not be surprising to people who follow the news. So there's an increase in anti-Semitic incidents, anti-Muslim incidents, and anti-immigrant incidents, especially against Latinos.
Do you find behind these incidents that we're talking about of hate crime and hate incidents, speech, et cetera, is it from largely an organized group of some sort, or are these random acts largely? Any feel for that?
It's not generally believed to have come from organized groups. I believe that there's greater discourse, and it's greater not promoting civil rights that seems to be in the general discourse and political discourse, and that seems to be bringing out more of this. So at least as far as in general with hate crimes, it's not coming from organized groups. With respect to some of the national incidents that we've heard about, I think they're still being investigated as to whether there's an organization behind, especially the anti-Semitic ones.
Let's talk about where someone can go for help if they are a victim of a hate crime or want to report one. They probably should try to fill out a police report about the crime. However, I know that if somebody is undocumented, they probably don't necessarily want to go to the police department and fill out a report. But there are other ways that a person can report these types of crimes. Can you fill us in on some of those other methods?
Sure. So at the Chicago Lawyers Committee, we have lawyers that represent people by advocating for them through the criminal process, as well as filing civil lawsuits to counteract the negative message that's sent by hate crimes. And so We encourage people, if they feel safe and comfortable, to call 911 if they're a victim of a hate crime or if they believe they've been a victim of a hate crime. But if they don't feel comfortable doing that, we've set up a helpline, which is 312-202-3663, where if they call us, we can assist them with making a report. And hate crimes are very underreported, so with the stats I told you about already, that's really only probably a fraction of all the hate crimes that have happened. So it's really important for us to know about the hate crimes, know about the hate incidents, so that we can take action to counteract them. And so it's really important that people report and find a way to comfortably do that.
Sure. And some of the brochures that you brought with you today, they contain more information about maybe, I don't know what's in them, know your rights and some other information.
Yes, it talks about the things we've already been talking about here today. What is a hate crime? What are the resources that are available, including the Chicago Lawyers Committee and the helpline.
Great. And I think, Fred, you also mentioned that there's that the sheriff has a hotline as well as the Attorney General.
Right.
Where things can be reported?
Yeah, the Illinois Attorney General's office has had a hate crimes hotline in place for a while now. And just this past December, the Sheriff's Department, the Cook County Sheriff's Department, announced that it was also launching a hate crimes hotline.
And is the South Asian community really getting targeted? Because these predominantly Muslim countries are the ones involved with the ban, and is that kind of bubbling over into hate crimes and backlash in those communities? Are you seeing that?
Yeah, we are seeing, unfortunately, an uptick in incidents involving not just Arabs and Muslims, but also people who are perceived to be Muslims or people who, at least in public perception, may be associated with or share clothing or may look Muslim, and this does include people who are Sikh, who wear turbans,
or
as
maybe
part
women
of their
with
faith.
the hijab sometimes.
Yes, or women wearing scarves, or other head covering. So yeah, we are seeing many more reports of such incidents, unfortunately, and we hope that by publicizing these numbers, we'll provide many more resources for.
And before I forget, Betsy, I know one thing that that you do with the Hate Crimes Project is you do a lot of training and education. So if there's a school or an organization who would like to invite you out or somebody from your team out to talk about hate crimes and give information, they can contact the Lawyers Committee.
Right. Thanks for bringing that up, because that's definitely true. We're anxious to get out and let everybody know about what their rights are, what is a hate crime, and what you can do to address it.
And I think that's a great thing for high schools to participate in, because peer pressure, I'm a parent of a teenager, and I know that there are a lot of things going on in high schools that are not always very nice, and this would be a great way. I mean, I see this kind of as a, hand in hand with bullying, which I know is a big problem in many schools today.
Right, and they're related, and we also know that most hate crimes are committed by younger people, so that's another reason why it's really important for people to know their rights and know the damage that's caused by hate crimes.
Let's shift a little bit and talk about undocumented immigrants, because they're in the crosshairs right now. And I know that President Trump has talked about he's going to hire, 10,000 new agents into the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency. Maybe you can give us a snapshot of what you see, what you've heard the plans are to beef this up.
Sure. Along with the travel ban, President Trump has issued 2 other executive orders having to do with immigration enforcement. One specifically for the border, and the primary pieces of that are expedited construction of the wall, along with hiring 5,000 more Border Patrol agents. And then in the interior, as you mentioned, Janine, the plan is to hire 10,000 additional immigration agents, which would basically double the size of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, as well as a reprioritization of who is a target for immigration enforcement. Now, it's important to note that President Obama deported 2.8 million people out of the United States. But he did so in a way that was targeted specifically to people with serious criminal convictions or people who had entered the United States recently. What we saw with the executive order is, a complete, revision of that priority system. People with criminal convictions, with any criminal conviction, are still targets, but along with that are people who have open criminal charges or people who may be charged with a criminal offense. And mind you, unlawful entry into the United States is a not only is a criminal offense, but is the most prosecuted federal offense in the federal criminal justice system. But along with that, there's catch-all language that says that anybody who, in the opinion of an immigration agent, poses a threat to public safety or national security is an immigration priority. So, based on the terms of the executive order itself, that means anybody who's out of status, essentially.
Well, let's talk a little bit about more closer to home here in Chicago. So I know that the mayor's talked about Chicago as being a sanctuary city, and I know that you don't like using the word sanctuary, although I see it in the press a lot. But we apparently here in Cook County have welcoming policies that have been established. And what are these welcoming policies like? How do they operate in our city today or our county today?
Sure. So various communities, based on considerations of public safety as well as consideration and respect for the contributions of immigrants within the broader community, have established policies that are more welcoming to immigrants. The City of Chicago has had on its books since 1985 a policy that says that city agencies, including the police, are not supposed to ask about immigration status. So to your earlier remark, this means that undocumented immigrants should be able to call the police without fearing, inquiry into their own status. So, the county has also passed a similar policy back in 2007, and there have been further additions to these policies since then that seek to further distance the city government and the county government from cooperation with immigration enforcement.
And I think Chicago Public Schools also has a similar policy?
That's right. The Chicago Public Schools just issued a memo to all principals and staffers this past week that instructs the principals not to allow immigration agents into the school buildings if they do not have a warrant.
And from my research, it seems like these protections for these immigrants have been fairly effective in reducing the number of deportations or what is it, detainer issuings by the enforcement agents?
Well, one thing to remember about these policies is that they do not prevent ICE from operating in the city of Chicago or Cook County or any other jurisdiction that has these policies. They are still going to conduct operations.
Right.
What
But
these
it makes
policies,
it a little more difficult, I think,
It
for
does.
them to get the. I'm concerned about the criminal element because I
Right.
know it seems like the majority of illegal immigrants are being kind of get on the radar screen from entering the criminal justice system.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
And so my question to you, because I'm just going to play devil's advocate here. I'm a tax-paying citizen of Chicago. Why wouldn't I want somebody who's got a criminal record taken out of the country if they're not here legally? What's the philosophy behind that?
Well, a couple of things. First off, you want to be able to catch and prosecute those individuals, and very often the victims or the witnesses to that criminal behavior are undocumented immigrants themselves. So you want policies in place to encourage these immigrants to come forward and cooperate with local law enforcement authorities and not face any concerns or fear that they're going to come under suspicion themselves. That's one thing. The other piece is that you want the criminal justice system to be able to run its course. And what had been happening is that on many occasions, people would be arrested, and then Immigration and Customs Enforcement would say, "Hey, we want this person," and ICE will pick up that individual before they've even been tried.
I see.
So you want the criminal justice system to run its course, and if the person is found guilty, then so be it. But in the meantime, you want to protect the integrity of our policing and our criminal justice system.
Let's talk a little bit about what an illegal immigrant can do, undocumented immigrant can do to protect him or herself. So I've heard people the ICE agents, which is the abbreviation for Immigration and Customs Enforcement officers, that they are sometimes going into neighborhoods and just going into buildings and kind of knocking on doors and trying to find people who are here illegally. If I'm behind that door, do I have to let that agent in?
Not without a court-issued warrant.
Okay.
And that is guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution. The Fourth Amendment still applies to all persons in the United States. And it is also Illinois law that says, that a law enforcement agent with only an administrative warrant, as opposed to a court-issued warrant, cannot compel entry into premises without the consent of the people inside. So people are certainly within their rights not to open a door, and in addition, not to answer any questions.
And I know that your group has also put together a rights card, Know Your Rights card,
Yes.
Which is very handy and can be carried around. What if somebody is here illegally and they're concerned about this? Either other ways they can come to ICE's attention would be, I know you from you've talked about you're here from Guatemala illegally.
Right.
I can then go to ICE and turn you in, essentially. I guess another way is if you're working in a place of business, and that business comes under investigation. So then suddenly I'm outed, if you will. What can I do what should I have in place? I guess you should have a plan.
Right.
What should that plan look like?
Right. So, yeah, certainly we are encouraging immigrants who may face some kind of danger with respect to these new policies to make sure that they have a plan that includes knowing where important documents are, knowing who's going to take care of the children, if one or both parents gets arrested, who's going to pay the bills, are there other contingencies, where are the medical records, who's going to take care of, making sure that people have their medications.
And they can also come to you for legal help, correct?
We do not provide direct service, though we work with networks of attorneys and nonprofit organizations that do provide legal assistance.
Okay, but if something's going on, people can contact, you have a hotline, right?
Yes, we do.
Which is this the one, 855-435-7693?
Yes,
Okay.
or 855-HELP-MY-FAMILY.
Okay, great. And let's talk briefly just about legislation. Is there any legislation here in Illinois at our state level coming about with hate crimes or with the immigration scenario that you
Illinois already does have a really strong hate crime act that has been amended over the years, but I understand that Attorney General Madigan has a proposal now to make it even stronger, particularly with respect to internet-based types of crimes. So she does have a proposal.
And maybe talk briefly just about what you see on the internet. Is this just more bullying, hate crime on social media? Is that what's
That's
You're
my
saying?
that's my understanding of the type of crime. I mean, the law always has to be evolving and changing with, unfortunately, what we're seeing in
Yeah,
terms of
cyberspace
discrimination.
is a whole other animal.
Right, because it used to be telephone harassment was the only thing like that, and even that probably wasn't innovation. So it's had to evolve to counter this kind of discrimination and other crimes.
And I think both your organization supports gathering, coming together, organizing as groups, correct? To help counteract some of these things we've talked about?
Oh, definitely, right. We definitely work with Illinois Coalition.
And maybe for the,
Yes.
if you are here as an undocumented person, that helps to give you some support, like you were talking about, have a plan. So if you happen to be in a church, belong to a church or some
Exactly.
community group, hopefully they're willing to step in and help with the children or help with certain things, getting help.
Exactly, exactly. Yes, along with this hotline, we have assembled a family support network that has been building up teams in local communities specifically to fully embrace people who are feeling vulnerable and offer support for them.
Very good. Well, I hate to we've run out of time, but I just want to make sure that we tell the public that if they do need to get help related to hate crime, they can call the Hate Crime Project hotline at 312-202-3663. Visit the Lawyers Committee website, which is clccrul.org. And also, your website is icirr.org, and we're going to put this up on the screen for people. And it's 1-855-HELP-MY-FAMILY or 1-855-435-7693 to Immigration Matters and Hate Crime Matters. And thank you very much, Betsy Schumer Moore and Fred Sal, for being here this morning. And thank you for doing this great work for our city and our state.
Thank you, Jean.
Thank you.
I'm Janine Cordero. Thank you for watching You and the Law.